We
We are
live.
We're live. Thanks for joining on your TVs in Texas and Louisiana. Soon to be Tampa, Miami, Los Angeles, and more.
That's right. The Smart Money Culture TV network is expanding, and the Porter brothers are growing, and the Impact Money Show is keeping you lucrative and informed.
Smart Money Culture TV with our main man, Fly Mackey. If you are watching on your TVs, you see Fly on there all the time. He's the crazy Indian guy, Native American. Talks about entering the fourth dimension and all this stuff sometimes. He's completely sober now. I don't know what he was like before.
Yeah.
No, great guy. We met Fly Mackey years ago, and he says, Bruce, you're the first guy to ever put me on stage. So he calls me up years later, and he's finally done what he was talking about all those years ago, what I put him on stage for. And actually, I guess he did a bunch of other stuff in between, but we're really happy to be involved and to be on the Smart Money Culture TV network because it is growing quickly, growing fast, expanding rapidly, and we're able to reach a lot of people. As well, we love X, streaming on YouTube, and these other wonderful platforms, LinkedIn. And we ought to, you know what we ought to do, David, is we ought to get on, let's see if we can stream on Big Speak or whatever it is, My Pillow Guys Network.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he was doing an interview the other day. He's got something lined up.
It's kind of funny because it's one of those things where like we're all, I feel like especially we all need to try to work together. Of course, he follows me on Twitter for years, but he's hard to get a hold of.
Oh, he's big time, Mr. Pillow Guy.
He's the pillow guy. I was actually, so he was coming to DC. He was going to be here on Friday, and I was like, well, shoot, man, I'm going to go. I'll try to interview him. And then, of course, they switched his deal, and they made it all electronic. They told him, well, we don't want you in DC because it's a hazard or something like that. And they switched to Thursday, and they're going to do it electronically. So, par for the course. But really a busy day in the news. As I was putting together our title, I thought to myself, wow, this is pretty interesting. I can't even get it all in. There is so much of it. I know from our man, Matt Dixon, who will be coming on in just about 10 minutes or so, 10 or 15 minutes. Latest CPI data incoming. How will it affect the market? Get expert commentary from Matt Dixon on the Impact Money Show.
Yeah, those markets keep climbing. Big weeks in the markets, man.
Woo.
We are looking pretty.
They are looking pretty. We have the markets just continue to go. The Dow futures are kind of flat, to be honest, at the moment, but they just look primed to go. I'll tell you, the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, let me show you this. Up above, I haven't seen it this high in a while. Here we go. Let me present. The Hong Kong Stock Exchange up above 3%. So that's pretty interesting. It has had some moves like this before, but that is a considerable move. And up above 17,000 as well, which, if you can remember, it was down. It dropped below 15,000 before they started printing the money. So I do think that has a lot to do with what is going on. They printed a whole bunch of money. They're sticking it out there, and that is a lot of this influx. The Chinese, as Trump always would say, are master Currency manipulators.
I don't doubt that. Those little mathematicians.
Those little mathematicians, David says. Now, I've been over to China, and what struck me as kind of interesting is they're not tiny. They're not small people. They're big, especially up in the north.
I was going to say, depends on which region you go to.
You're exactly right. Up over 3%. So that's happening. Of course, Bitcoin is on its tear. It's continuing its tear. This is just absolutely going. Well, actually, let me stick on this page here real quick. I really like this page because it gives me these. I can usually tell what's going to happen in the markets today by what's going on in Asia. I mean, I guess that's not too hard to figure out, right? I mean, they're up before us.
Yeah.
Look at what's happening going on in Asia as you wake up and watching the Impact Money Show. You can follow us. I'm setting up our X account. It's at Impact Money Show, as well as David is Sir David Porter. I'm Networks Manager, and of course Matt Dixon is MD Trade. That's Dr. Trade. Just kidding. MD Trade. So, but if you look at this, one of the things that we talk about is oil being a good indicator onto the market and supply and everything like that. And this oil, man, this number has stayed below $80. I mean, it popped up very briefly, popped up above $80, but it has pretty much stayed below $80. And that's a pretty good indicator that the economy is stagnant is the right word, but kind of. Global boost with a nice pump today, up 10%. I think that, nice. Of course, that is the coin that we started or we had a hand in starting 10 years ago, 10-year-old blockchain similar to Bitcoin. And all-time high, if you see right over here, the all-time high is $2.14. Okay, so if we go back to that, that is a nice, about almost a 200xer. I don't mean 200%. I mean 200x.
Yep, that's where you really make a difference off a couple grand or a couple hundred. And
we've been Xing in the markets here recently. Of course, with some of the other ones we'll talk about a little bit later. Bitcoin, the mighty Bitcoin, 71,872. The rising tide lifts all ships. The rising tide lifts all ships, okay? And $71,000 per Bitcoin, I can tell you, unbelievable. I started buying Bitcoin at $70. It's unbelievable to me. It's absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable.
You better believe it. You're not going to believe it.
It is unbelievable. Ethereum up over $4,000. Slight pullback on the 24-hour, but shoot, guys, it's $4,000. I remember our other brother James telling me to buy at $3.
33 cents.
Ethereum, come on. Of course, I've had plenty of Ethereum over the years. So. A couple of things, we'll dive a bit more into the markets in a minute with our good friend Matt Dixon. Federal Reserve last night was trending for literally 5 minutes.
Then they people wanted to rip that one. That trend.
Shut that down. They shut it down.
I guess money can buy some things, huh?
The Federal Reserve is the biggest scam that's in your lifetime, in our lifetime, in our parents' lifetime, in the history of the country. The Federal Reserve is the biggest scam in the history of the country. It's out of control.
Yeah.
They print up the money out of thin air.
There are no reserves, and they're not federal.
They're not federal, and there's no reserves. They basically they made a deal, and actually, I guess I'll run through some of the videos. I downloaded them to play them again, but it might just be easier to do it. And you know me, I'm always multitasking here, and it might be easier to just pull them off, and you can see, because what's great is that the central bank in the U.S. called the Federal Reserve is the biggest scam in the history of the country. So let me go ahead and do that, because that's actually a pretty good way to just go over the ones that are popular here. So, because there's some good stuff. People are starting to figure it out, David. They're figuring it out. People are figuring it. They've been told over and over again. And guys, I'm not going to do it today, but I am going to do it. That US dollar that you think, oh no, don't use Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is satanic, and this is all this stuff. Guys, those dollars that you are using, they're full of satanic symbols and occult symbols. What do you think they put them on there for? Just fun? We're not going to talk about that today. But people are starting to figure out that the Federal Reserve is a scam. Big time scam. Let's just look at this. Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve.
Yeah, I think Trump kind of explained that he was a bit interested in it.
You asked the question in your book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, what is the Federal Reserve, and what is your answer?
Well, what it is, it's a cartel. It's not a government agency. It has the appearance of it being a government agency, and they went to great lengths to give it that facade. It does have the power of government because Congress voted to give the power of enforcement to it. But in its essence, underneath it, it's a cartel. It's nothing different than a banana cartel or an oil cartel or sugar cartel. It happens to be a banking cartel. They got together, they drew up the rules and regulations for their own industry, to self-regulate their own industry is what cartels do. And
you asked the question in your book, The Creature from...
He's absolutely correct. I'm gonna go on with that. It is a cartel. We have a central banking cartel, and the cartels have taken over control of the country. If you control the money, you control the country. Absolutely, 150%. If you've watched the play Alexander Hamilton, they asked him, they said, what do you want to control, the State Department or the Treasury? He said, the Treasury. If you control the money, you control the country.
Yes. And apparently, if you control the education system, you can control the future.
And if you control the education system, you can control the future. That is absolutely correct, David. Well said, my friend.
Yeah, I got a gist of Trump starting to see the brighter side of blockchain. I think he realizes not only did he make money from doing whatever, he also sees that he can control his own accounts.
Yeah, we'll see on Trump. This is what Woodrow Wilson said. Woodrow Wilson is who signed the Federal Reserve Act. After he did it, he says, I am the most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is controlled by a system of credit. Our system of credit is unconcentrated. Our system of credit is concentrated. The growth of a nation, therefore, and all of the activities are in the hand of a few men. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world. no longer a government of free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and the duress of a small group of dominant men. That was Woodrow Wilson, who was the man who sold us out.
Yeah. There's also a declassified conversation from the
purchasing power
from the there's a declassified conversation from the Oval Office before, obviously he's on his deathbed, and I think he was talking to Edward Mandelhouse, and they have a conversation that explains exactly the plan of how they're going to enslave everybody by this debt system.
Guys, when you have something like this, I'm going to play this video, and then we're going to go to Matt. And there's a lot more to play. But when you have something like this, you have to understand that there is a conspiracy to do it. It doesn't just happen by accident. There is a conspiracy in order to make it happen. There's central banking cartels. They've taken over most of the countries of the world, and I did not kill myself.
There is no other power greater than the power over money, the power to create and contract the money supply, the power to control the purchasing power of your money. Throughout history, this has proven to be the most sought after monopolistic power of man. And it has become more sophisticated over the decades and over the centuries, more sophisticated now and more international in scope than ever before. So I see the issue of power and the control over money as being something that we cannot ignore, we must address. I believe closely associated with this is the issue of morality as well. By what moral right do we have to create purchasing power out of thin air? Whether it's done by the creation of credit or Federal Reserve notes, or whether it's the creation of SDRs in an international scope, by what right do they do this? Is it any more moral to dilute the value of your purchasing power of the money you hold in your wallet than it is for the farmer to dilute the milk supply with water? I would say there's an issue of morality here just as strong as the issue of power.
And they got rid of him quick. They got rid of him. The great Ron Paul. I want to welcome Matt Dixon on, and also welcome back to our viewers on TV in Texas and Louisiana who's watching on Smart Money Culture TV. We have the great Matt Dixon here. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Good morning, Bruce. Morning, David. How are you doing?
Morning.
Doing fantastic.
Very well.
Really charged up this morning. I got my 2 cups of coffee in. I woke up 10 minutes before my alarm. I'm ready. I'm going.
Brilliant. We've got a big day today. We've got CPI news out of America.
We have CPI news.
Yeah, out of
Heard
America.
it here first.
So they've got core CPI. It was 3.9%. It's expected to go down to 3.7%. But let's see how it comes out. I mean, that's the core. Core means that's excluding food and energy, which seems rather ridiculous.
It is rather ridiculous because that stuff's up like 20% more.
Yeah. So it's what people have to spend their money on is food and energy. So I don't really understand why they have that particular measure. But dropping to 3.7%. The target rate is 2%. So they're not a long way from twice their target, their preferred rate, which is pretty bad. And even the flat rate is still, you can see from here, expected to stay steady at 3.1%. So that's not a good situation at all. So the reason this really matters, interest rates really do matter, and inflation is what affects interest rates. And the Fed, their mandate is, one of their mandates is to keep inflation at the target rate of 2%, keep inflation under control. And when inflation is above that target rate, and bear in mind the target is 2%, their current rate is around 3.7%, the core rate, if it comes out as expected today. So it's way, way above target. So the Fed should be raising interest rates to try to bring inflation down to target. And they've basically been putting off raising rates because they know that the US economy, along with the rest of the world's economy, is in a bit of trouble. It's beginning to slow down. And so if they were to raise rates to control inflation, they're going to slow growth even more. And they know, and we looked at this again, many previous occasions, they know that recession is on its way. Recession is coming in 2024, later in 2024. All the signs are there. So they really do not want to be raising rates, which they really need to do to control inflation. So this is why they've been talking a big talk about raising rates and keeping rates higher for longer, etc., etc. But they don't want to be in recession, and this is why the markets know what's happening, and the markets' bets on interest rates are that they're not going to be raised, they're not going to be dropping rates for some time to come, and they keep pushing it back and pushing it back when they're going to drop rates. And the reason they can't drop rates, as I say, is because inflation is still there. So those figures today, the CPI figures today, are really important, because if the CPI figures come out strong, if they come out 3.7 for core, 3.7 or above, and for the flat rate 3.1 or above, then that would mean that there's more upward pressure on interest rates. When interest rates go up, or they stay up for longer, as is likely to be the case, then that's not good for risk assets. So we've seen, it's really interesting, you can't really tell from where the US dollar is. Obviously, interest rates affect the value of the US dollar. And so if we do see higher inflation, we'll probably see the US dollar rise a bit. We'll look at this on a shorter time frame in a moment. This is the long time frame. And I like looking at it because when there's big turning points in the US dollar, it really does tend to correspond.
Hold on, I just added your chart to the stage.
Okay, that's fine. So this is good.
I just added your chart to the stage. Yep.
Great. So this is looking at the long-term view of the US dollar index, basically. And what's really interesting is that when you see a high or a low, and you see these big turning points, when there's a high or a low in the US dollar, it corresponds with a turning point in Bitcoin. So for example, back in 2017, Bitcoin was $864. That was at this high, this dollar high here. And that coincided with that's $864. Then price exploded to $20,000, and that the high corresponded with a low in the US dollar. And then the US dollar started to rise again, and then we have Bitcoin falling all the way back down to 3,800. That corresponded with a high in the US dollar. And then the US dollar started to fall and Bitcoin started to rise, and then we got a high in the US dollar. We got a 28,600. Well, that was a high from that 3,850. So we got that spike there. Then basically, as the US dollar rose again, we then got the FTX crisis, which was a low in Bitcoin at the time, 15,005. And then from that time to now, we've seen the US dollar rising the US dollar falling, but Bitcoin rising. And we're now at all-time highs. So this is a historic time in the history of Bitcoin, because everybody who bought Bitcoin at any point throughout its history and hodled it, is now at an all-time high on their Bitcoin portfolio, at or thereabouts, an all-time high. So everybody in the whole history of Bitcoin who bought and held it now, no matter what price they bought it at, is actually in profit.
Just what I told everybody.
Yeah. And it's looking right now, as we mentioned yesterday, we were just talking about it yesterday, but all the signs are that Bitcoin, well, there's nothing really that can hold Bitcoin back right at the moment, because demand is way, way higher than the supply. And as we said again yesterday, the supply is going to be halving in April. Next month, they're going to halve the supply. So the amount of supply coming onto the market will be half what it is today, and yet the demand will be, you'd expect it will actually increase, because there's more and more money flow. We had the retail phase that we keep talking about. It's like, a car acceleration, 0 to 60. Well, here, 0 to 69,000 on Bitcoin for the retail phase. Then we got the pullback to the FTX crisis, 15.5. And now we've started to rise towards the ETF approval, and now we've got this acceleration once again in the institutional phase of institutional money flooding in. The floodgates are open, flooding into Bitcoin. And so let's see what happens with the US dollar. it's not going to go in a straight line. So if we get high CPI today, we could see a little spike higher. I mean, this is my chart. I've not changed this chart. I showed this chart weeks ago on the Money Show here, Impact Money. And basically, this is what I expected. We had this channel, and we can open that out a little bit, but we have a channel here on dollar index, and we broke below that channel. That doesn't mean that the dollar is dead yet. If we get high CPI today, we could again get another push higher on the dollar. But it's looking as though the dollar's days of strength for the medium term at least are numbered, because we will be seeing, even if we have high inflation, we have to be seeing lower interest rates or money printing or some combination of that later this year. When recession starts to hit, when the economy starts to really slow down, they are going to either print money or lower interest rates or both. That will cause the US dollar to fall. And most likely, there's a possibility either we see the dollar peaking here, and that could be the high in Bitcoin, or we could see when the dollar falls, that could be the high in Bitcoin. But basically, I suspect, as it's happened every time historically, when we see a turning point in the US dollar, a long-term turning point like this, that will correspond with a high or a low in Bitcoin. So it's really important to watch the US dollar. We'll just look at this briefly on the short-term chart, just to show this was that little parallel channel I told you about that we've been watching recently. And we did break below the parallel channel, so that meant a real breakdown for the US dollar, but we broke down here below. It doesn't mean that as I say, the US dollar is dead or going to continue the decline necessarily. It could just be that this is an A wave up and this is some kind of B wave down, and we can still get a C wave up. So if we get strong inflation figures today, and then it's only a couple of hours away, less than a couple of hours actually, that you get this CPI announcement, let's just see where it is. Let's hope it's not too uncomfortable, because it's going to affect everything. And obviously, if we move on to gold, it will affect the value of gold, because gold is that hedge against inflation that we talked about. Here it is again, not far from the all-time high. It's pulled back in what appears to be a corrective move. And remember, impulses are these strong movements in one direction where you don't see overlap. But then here you can see lots of overlapping candlesticks, lots of them, virtually sideways. That's what's called a corrective move. And it's telling you that there's likely to be new all-time highs coming for gold. So with that in mind, what could drive it? Well, if we get strong inflation figures out, bearing in mind gold is the traditional hedge against inflation, then we could see gold prices rallying potentially to new all-time highs, and that would be that hedge against inflation if we see inflation picking up. We've seen, again, we saw this is the S&P 500, SPX, and we can see it's basically been rising in this channel for quite some time now. I've got it labeled as an ABW, X, A, B, Y, X, A, B, Z. And in fact, we had this labeled in advance with a target, and this was based on Fibonacci projections, and it actually spiked precisely to our target and then fell. So again, if we see strong CPI figures, then that's going to push the SPX, the S&P 500 down. And that would mean we've seen at least a short-term peak here on SPX. And we may see some divergence moving forward. And I've said this from years ago. At some point in the future, we will see divergence of cryptos like Bitcoin with those traditional assets. They were always labeled together as risk assets, but Bitcoin is slowly and gradually attaining that mantle of digital gold and this store of value. So when we see trouble in the world, actually Bitcoin is a better store of value than gold, to be perfectly honest. You can send Bitcoin around the world in a moment or in a matter of minutes. Gold is quite difficult to transport, but Bitcoin, with the halving as well, it's actually going to have a lower supply base, compared with the actual amount. So it's going to have a lower production compared with supply. So the cash to flow ratio is basically going to be better than gold. So Bitcoin looks like it has a tremendous future. I can't see anything that can stop Bitcoin right now unless we have geopolitical issues. So let's just jump onto Bitcoin and see where we're at there. As I say, everybody who invested in Bitcoin throughout its history is, unless you invest in the last couple of days, you're at an all-time high on your Bitcoin portfolio. So who can go against the trend? The trend is definitely on the upside. The supply-demand ratio is absolutely in your favor. The economic conditions are basically they're going to be printing more dollars. They're not going to be producing much more Bitcoin at all. In fact, the supply is going to halve in April. So really, you'd be almost foolish to bet against Bitcoin. But obviously, be cautious and careful whichever way you're going. Ethereum could be the very next one that we see an ETF approval. So I think Ethereum is now beginning to run ahead of some of the other alts. And I did say some time ago, after the ETF approval for Bitcoin, I said Ethereum is probably going to be the next favorite one. Now, one that really has stood out just recently, if we can look at XRP, I've said
what a day yesterday. XRP
20% in one day.
Yep.
Absolutely amazing. And people were beginning to lose heart on XRP. I had people on Twitter saying, "Oh, is it ever going to move?" And the thing is, I said, you can't predict. It's just one of those really strange ones, like Litecoin, in fact, because Litecoin pumped 20% as well.
Yep.
So it's one of those that's really hard. It's just one that just waits for you. And you have to be really patient, because the moment you change your mind, say, "Oh, it's not going to move," then it pumps 20% in one day, which is
never fails.
Yeah. So that was absolutely tremendous with XRP. I mean, if we just scroll out a little bit there, Litecoin has been an amazing one. It's actually followed our expectation really nicely, because I think David actually followed this advice with, I think he was talking about investing in Litecoin. Yep. When we saw this triangle, the triangle is basically the most predictive chart formation that there is, in my view. When you see a triangle, which is an A, B, C, D, E movement, it's basically just a continuation pattern, they call it. And when you get the thrust from the triangle, the thrust is, from the E wave upwards, it's normally very, very strong, and that's precisely what we saw. And because this actual triangle is what's called an X wave, we expect it to be followed by a Y wave, which is basically made up of an A, B, C to the upside. So that's precisely what happened. We had the A wave up, we had the B wave down, which actually virtually retested the triangle, which is, again, typical chart movement. And then we're moving up in the final C wave. So I suspect we probably have higher to go in this C wave before we get a correction to the downside. So that's been a really good one. But I actually shorted this last night and closed it this morning, because it's very dangerous to go against the market. I actually shorted Solana this morning as well. Well, not this morning, sorry, yesterday. I shorted it at 154, closed it at 149, I think. Again, got to be very, very cautious, but I do think that Solana is one that's doing what's called an ending diagonal. So this wave 4, the fifth wave, is the final wave in this particular cycle. Doesn't mean it's the end of the movement up. In this particular cycle, it's a fifth wave, and it looks very, very much to me as though it's what's called an ending diagonal, which is basically made up of an ABC for wave 1, an ABC correction for wave 2, ABC for wave 3. So I think maybe we've got a little bit higher to push up to finish wave 3. Then we'll get an ABC down wave 4 and a final ABC for wave 5. So if that's correct, whilst we may get a fair pullback, especially if we get strong CPI figures, we still, I believe, have new highs to come on Solana. That looks like the wave pattern to me. So I'll be keeping a close eye on that one. As Bruce was saying, oil has been really lackluster. We expected it. I mean, we had this kind of resistance line drawn above here, this dotted line, and it spiked through it a couple of times, but it's, clearly is not a strong resistance because it has spiked through it. But it appears to be banding the price. And the reason I think that oil isn't going higher than it is, you thought it would, because there is certainly geopolitical pressure. The Houthis are still causing problems in the Red Sea. There are still tensions in the Middle East. Admittedly, people are finding other ways and other places and so on to get their oil from. But you would think oil would be higher under these circumstances. And I think the reason it's not is because the economies are beginning to slow a little bit. And if economies are slowing, that means production will reduce, and production which uses energy to produce oil to move all the machines, etc., to power all the machinery, to create the energy. It is basically, if the economy is slowing down a little bit, then, and especially if we see higher inflation today, then that's going to put definite more pressure on the Fed to maintain rates higher for longer. So that would mean demand for oil potentially going down even further. And there's all sorts of reasons that we've discussed about productivity improvements, oil productivity, that is, improvements in not just in the US, but particularly the US, but also around the world. So there's more, the world is basically awash with oil right now. So there's not much reason, well, it just can't push higher, even though we have geopolitical tensions at the moment. So unless something absolutely erupts, the oil price is not looking that bullish. And it's unusual because normally when you see gold and oil, as I said before, they're actually highly correlated. They tend to move in lockstep together. And we are seeing, gold at all-time highs, or there or thereabouts. And if we see high CPI today, gold will push higher. But I don't think that's going to help oil. So actually, this is one of the few occasions that oil and gold are actually moving in opposite directions. So that's an unusual one. But we've had some great ones stand out today. When I say today, sorry, the last few days. Again, we're seeing more and more interest in the AI tokens. So let's keep an eye. I'm probably going to create some sort of AI index of tokens, because I think they're the big ones for 2024. This, as I said yesterday, is the opportunity to create generational wealth. This is once in a lifetime. You don't get many opportunities in life to make a real change, to your life, to actually make generational wealth and basically set yourself up for life. There's not many opportunities, so I think it makes sense to grab hold. Obviously, don't over risk. Don't risk things that you can't afford, but actually there is an opportunity. And I think it makes sense for us to grasp hold of that opportunity. So there's lots of opportunities, and we're here to help, both on this show, on the Impact Money Show, but also obviously through eBay and through myself and the Twitter, that trying to give guidance to people. And hopefully, if people are listening, you'll take these opportunities, because it's absolutely amazing, the potential that we have here to multi-x your money. Even the meme coins, as we discussed yesterday, it's risky money, but you can do 100x times your money. Even at $1,000, 100,000 can really change a lot of people's lives. If they're carrying a lot of debt, 100,000 could wipe out their debt potentially. 100%. So, yeah. So let's watch out for dollar index today. Let's watch out for what's going to happen with CPI. That's really, that's going to be the big mover today, and it's out in 1 hour and 45 minutes. That's when the CPI news is coming out.
All right. Well, we're going to be watching it closely. Great segment this morning, Matt. Good stuff.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, yeah, it's really exciting times. I mean, I can't really get over enough how exciting this is. That it is, an amazing opportunity. We've actually had cycles like this. These are repeating cycles where you get the bull and the bear market in crypto, and I don't think this is going to be that different unless we get an interruption at some point with geopolitical issues. I think this cycle is going to play out like the rest, where you'll get your alt season. We're getting Bitcoin, Ethereum, but you're going to get alt season at some point, and these are the times of real opportunity for us as well to change our own lives and everybody else's lives around us.
That's absolutely correct. Well, amazing. We have a bit more to cover in the hour. There's so much going on, and it's such an exciting moment that it's hard to even fit it into an hour show. But I'm going to try to finish that up here in the last few minutes. Amazing report. We may play it again on the later show, and we plan on seeing you in the morning. We'll be watching these CPI numbers very closely.
Great. Yeah, we'll report on that tomorrow, and let's see what impact it has on Impact Money tomorrow. Thank you.
Amazing.
See you guys.
Awesome.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
So one thing I wanted to talk about right off here is the Tate brothers. The Tate brothers. What in the world is going on with the Tate brothers? And why are they arrested again? Did you see this news?
Yeah. No, what is the headline?
Well, the headline is, and I'm gonna do a quick browse, of course. I don't think we're gonna get much on it. But you know, what were they arrested for? And it was this stemming from an arrest warrant, apparently, that came out of the UK. And so this is going to be a pretty sticky situation for them because, you know, it's gentlemen, great discussions. Thank you, sir. Great to see you, Dr. Oleg, again on here. You know, the with the Tate brothers, it's just unbelievable. It is unbelievable what is going on. You know, how our system, our legal system, is set up really to just they absolutely can target whoever they want. So we have this lawfare system that is it's out of control. And if you do the wrong thing or they don't like what you're doing or any of that stuff, they can absolutely come after you. And so we saw with the Tate brothers, of course, they went through this already in Romania. They were in jail for about 90 days, I think. And they just sat it through. But now, of course, what this means is that they are going to more than likely be extradited to the UK. Let's see. Breaking news. Andrew Tate and Trish Tate were just arrested again. The arrest is much more sinister and disturbing, though, than the last one. The details of what just happened may make you 76 levels. This is from somebody else. This is not the doing of some random officials in a small country. Disgustingly, one of the most powerful governments in the world is actually behind it. The UK authorities reached their authoritarian arm 1,000 miles away and commanded their arrest in Romania. Surely they must have done something really bad to deserve the arrest warrant from the United Kingdom, right? No! They were ripped from their home by men with guns over BS allegations from a decade ago. And this is kind of like, you know, there's these sexual aggression charges from a decade ago. And you see this is what they go after Trump and everybody else for. And it's like these people come up with these, a decade or 2 decades ago, this person did that to me. I mean, guys, you know, the reality of it is, like, and I'm gonna go back to that. The reality of it is, I mean, let's be honest. Like, you can hardly remember what happened like 5 years ago, like, let alone 10 or 20 years ago when you were probably doing God only knows what in your younger days. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous that this stuff can happen. The charges are related to the allegations of sexual aggression. The case in the UK dating back to 2012 and 2015. Not recent, not substantiated. On the contrary, the Tate brothers have shown overwhelming evidence the accusations against them are false. Yet here we are with them having to spend even more time behind bars after they already held them unjustly for months, and the Romanian authorities. Make no mistake, this is not justice or the pursuit of it. Guys, I'll tell you what. The Tate brothers, they've made too much money and they're too influential. And the next step is, of course, that they knock them off. I mean, that's the way these guys work. They bought Bitcoin, a lot of it, at I think $700 or something like that, very very low price, and they're super wealthy, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, if not $1 billion, and they are very influential. I don't personally, tune into them that much. I have a lot of respect for them, but I don't know everything about them. But from what I see, I have a lot of respect for them. And I definitely have a lot of respect for the influence that they have. And, but it absolutely is crazy the way that our system operates right now. And the UK, of course, is just like our country, controlled by the central bank. And I know I talked a little bit about the Federal Reserve, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit more because that is so important. The central bank in the UK is what we were fighting against way back when, in 1776, as that poster mentioned. 1776, that's what we were fighting against, the central bank. The central bank, the founding fathers realized that the central bank had taken over the country. It had taken over the UK, and of course, we're levying these taxes. It's not even the governments that are elected of the world. It is the Federal Reserve. 4532. So, this is, we're in a situation now where we have an unelected Federal Reserve that levies taxes on us. That is how we get inflation. Inflation is a tax. Is the tax. The tax that they collect, the tax that is collected by your income tax and these other taxes, that tax is in effect just so that you don't have the money. They don't want you to have the money so that you can't protest and that you can't revolt. And so they make sure that you don't have the money. That's it. That's basically the burn. They just take that money and whatever, because the new system, the system that we have set up through the Federal Reserve, is they just print the money and they tax you without you having any recourse by inflation. So the Federal Reserve, the central banking cartel, totally controls the country. And this is a very, very bad situation that we're in. And we have to end it. I put out a post yesterday and I said, hey, should we end the Fed? Are you guys ready? I said, to end the Fed. It was pretty interesting, actually, some of the responses I got, because people don't understand. They still don't understand. They're starting to get it, but they don't quite understand. Federal Reserve. I know I cut this one a little short, and I still have to talk, of course, but I can actually talk about it even while I'm going through this, because the wars in the Ukraine and the wars in Israel are directly funded by the Federal Reserve. They don't even need Congress to approve it. They want Congress to approve the spending so that people don't figure it out, so they don't get wise to it. Okay? Here, this is my post here. Are you ready to end the modern day slavery system by closing the Federal Reserve? And of course, I have this this piece of paper here on here, and that is, let me see here, 48. That is indicative of what's going on here. I'm a piece of paper, and I control your entire life. Some of the comments, ain't it the truth? Yes, I said, let's change it. Then there's a bigger slave to digital currency. And this is one thing that everybody says, and this is like the boogeyman. This is what they want you to think. That's why they pumped Bitcoin so high that you can hardly even own one. How about stop being a slave, period, I said. Proof of work blockchains, the old ones, Bitcoin, Litecoin. I wanted to keep it in this size, so I didn't say Global Boost, but Global Boost as well. Digibyte, there's not many though. Have a set amount in the code that can never be changed. That's one of the reasons why they've skyrocketed to such prices and fueled the monetary revolution. It's impossible to freeze, stop, or seized by court order. I misspelled there a little bit. I am a piece of paper, Edward says. that has no value and printed at will to devalue your savings in retirement, and given to non-U.S. invaders, which runs the national debt that can never be paid. The reason why they're able to give all of these people that are coming into the country illegally money is because they just print it. If they had to take it from you, you wouldn't give it to them. So instead, they print it literally out of thin air, and they take it from you. Is it time to end the Fed? Is it time to end the Fed? I think so. I've been saying it was time to end the Fed for a long time. Modern money is made from, oh, come on, give me a break. The Federal Reserve is neither federal nor does it have any reserves, Brian Cox says. It is a private, for-profit, third-party corporation that has been given the right to put ink on paper, call it money, and sell it to the American people at a compound interest rate. In a nutshell, it is a fraud. You're exactly right. You're exactly correct. What is the alternate idea? And if I can spend Bitcoins everywhere, I'd be fine with that. I'll tell you what, guys. One of the most important things that we can do is start accepting coins from each other without putting them into the US dollar, without going in and out of the US dollar. Stop going in and out of the US dollar. Start actually staying in the coins. Start staying in them. So one of the things, of course, that I also wanted to talk about, and this is at 52 here, 52.00, and that is, speaking of saying the coins are friends with the SHIB with hat. SHIB with hat is on a tear. It's been on a tear. Guys, this is the deal here, okay? There's a lot of different deals, I should say. But this one is one that we're directly corresponding with these people with. This thing has gone, it's X'd. I think it's going to X some more. They're having their sale today, their first ever NFT sale. It is at 3 p.m. UTC time that it starts. I believe that's 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. They're selling 1,000 NFTs. 1,000 NFTs, and that is a limited edition. And that NFT is going to get you some cool stuff. SHIB with, let me just go ahead on over to their page here. You can check this out. Make sure to give them a follow. But these NFT sales, I think, are going to do some really cool things for it. SHIB with that NFT sale, I'm going to read that off, but I'll play their video first. Their video is pretty cool here. If this thing follows Dog with Hat, which they're calling themselves the Dog with Hat Killer, then that's going to be a 2 billion market cap. We're at a 15, 17 million right now. You can do the math here. A little bit more information on the NFT sale. Okay, that's starting at 3 p.m. SHIB with that NFT sale Tuesday, 12th of March at 3 p.m. UTC. SHIB with that NFT collection sale on Tuesday, March 12th at 3 p.m. UTC. Total number of NFTs, only 1,000 unique pieces. The mint price is 3 SOL per NFT. NFT holders will enjoy a multitude of benefits. Among these advantages, the following stand out. Only 100 unique pieces will be made. Once the SHIB swap is released, they're building their own swap desk, kind of like Pancake Swap. Once SWIP Shop is released, the NFT holders will enjoy the exclusive privileges of trading at 0 fees. Unlike platforms like Radium and Jupiter, which impose fees on every transaction, and this is only for NFT holders, as well as a private club exclusively reserved for NFT holders, grants access to this profitable resource. And I'm reading this from their financial growth and success. And speaking of their financial growth and success, let me bring you right over here to their DEX chart. Very pretty looking chart as we have here. You can see popped right up. This was the first time we covered them right here. This is the first time they came on Impact Money, popped up to 28 cents, almost 3 cents. Okay, retraced. This is all healthy retracement. You go and you fill in the gaps here. Okay, and then that becomes, so if I go back even further, all right, so what happens is then the old high becomes the support. You can see that right here, right? So then that became support. Now we have here, and now it looks like we're having our new support level right here, which could mean if I'm reading these charts, that we go bam. And if you look right here, we have a 12.8 million market cap at the moment, and this community is growing a lot. So super excited about it. I definitely want to get an NFT. They're a fun crew, and I'm excited about it. So 3 p.m. UTC is 11 a.m. London time, or 11 a.m. For you there no, 3 p.m. is London time, right? UTC. That's right. And it's 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and 10 a.m. in Texas, where people are joining us on TV. All right. We've done it again, David.
Yes, fantastic. Had a great time. And this today, like you said, was action-packed, man. Lots going on.
It was action-packed. Lots going on. We look forward to seeing you guys in about 5 hours. Cheers.
Your voice is powerful. When combined with social engagement, it's a force for change. Decentralized media paired with free speech is the catalyst for an empowered world and a unified, invaluable ecosystem. Join Global Boost, become a champion of free speech, and help to reshape the future of media.